Both cameras up. And Mark.
Home is in the North Shore suburbs of Chicago.
A small farm town.
I am 24 years old.
I'm 22.
I'm 23.
I lived in a small town in New Jersey.
You know, spending your days playing baseball in the front of the house.
I was just starting my sophomore year in high school.
My first semester of college.
I had to be at the high school at 7:30.
I had class at 10 and I overslept and I woke up at pretty much 9:55, and so I didn't turn on the television or the radio, obviously, because I was already late for class.
I had just moved to South Korea and it was around like 11 o'clock at night, and I was doing homework because I put it off or something. I had a really big algebra test.
We were in calculus class.
My art teacher, Mrs. Johnson, got a phone call from her niece who was in the second tower.
The principal said over the intercom that
2 planes had crashed into the Twin Towers.
Killing a lot of people.
People that were bleeding.
People dying.
Large-scale
Terrified.
destruction.
Killed.
A plane crashed into a building in New York City.
shock and disbelief.
Terrorism and war.
Tragedy.
Attack.
Another plane crashed into the Pentagon.
Who's hurt, who's
Who was
safe.
responsible for this?
Firefighters and stuff go in
And buildings.
and never came back out.
People running.
Killed.
Smoke.
Disaster.
Didn't know what was coming next.
Literally were wiping ash off of their body.
A lot of people were suffering.
People running around, smoke
People
everywhere.
on the streets, and they were all hysterical.
2 planes just flew into the World Trade Center. We were looking up in the sky and there not being any airplanes.
We were all trying to get on the computers to find out what was going on, and the internet wasn't really working.
My aunt worked in the Pentagon. We couldn't get a hold of her.
my dad had boarded a plane that morning to New York City.
There was a long line for the payphone, which we still used at the time.
I was really nervous, so I went to the cafeteria to go watch the news. And I just saw like the devastation that was happening and that my dad might be a part of it.
Parents usually think about kids or are concerned about their kids, but I think everybody thought about, are my mom and dad at home right now, or are they somewhere safe?
The next morning was interesting because the first thing that happened was I had my appointment for the cable guy to come and set it up. So he came at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then I had TV for the rest of the day, and I remember I didn't leave the apartment. I just sat there by myself and just watched the news. I was stunned into silence.
Things in the news, like people jumping out of the buildings. Things like that you can't unsee, and when you're that age, it really matters.
It was definitely a loss of innocence. Forced us to grow up a little faster.
We were of that age where we were just kind of starting to like make sense of how we dealt with the world and how if we cared about politics or if we cared what we thought about war or things like that. And up until that point, war was something that happened somewhere else. And all of a sudden, we couldn't avoid it.
As like a young American who was in college and ready for a future, and all of a sudden the future became very uncertain.
I just remember being in my bathroom and crying, and like I said, I was wearing this Give Peace a Chance shirt. I remember just like taking it off and getting changed. We knew that something kind of big and generation shaping was taking place.
I would describe the temperature and the atmosphere of the country a few days after the attacks as being bizarrely patriotic. I didn't really understand the patriotism, I have to admit that. I feel like it was missing the point.
The day after September 11th, I remember waking up in my neighborhood and walking outside, going to the bus stop to go to school, and the first thing I noticed is that everybody had their American flags out.
Even just the kids in the town were doing lemonade stands and car washes, and that's what really stands out to me after 9/11. All these people really rallying behind the heroes, whether it was $1 for a car wash or, you know, blood to save a life. Everyone I knew was giving.
If a whole nation experiences that, if a whole generation experiences something like that, it's a connection.
Our generation is often thought of as very sort of idealistic and really hopeful, and the whole sort of idea, and actually a lot of what I've based my career on since then, is about connecting more of the world to important causes. I think that a lot of that was molded from 9/11, and certainly there was opportunity to kind of lose hope after that day, but I do think that millennials grew a lot of sort of internal hope that there could be heroes born out of tragedy, there could be you know, goodness that comes out of disaster.
I'm a millennial, and I will never forget.